So we left off with Germany invading through Belgium and not expecting Russia to be able to mobilize quite as quickly as they did. And of course, they are going to be able to mobilize. 90% of Germany's forces are invading France. And so, what's going to eventually happen is they're going to set up a trench system, otherwise known as the front, if you will, from All Quiet on the Western Front. We're going to talk about trenches a little bit more in detail here in just a moment, but we're going to have the Western Front and the Eastern Front. And so they really dig in, and this war that was supposed to be over very quickly, as they had seen in the Franco Russian and the other couple wars prior to this that were over in just a few weeks, turn out to be some long term commitments that they just really were not quite expecting. Alrighty, we'll be coming back to this map throughout the course of the video today. Immediate causes of World War I. Now, again, we talked about long-term causes and what really kind of sets the stage. But if you ask most people what starts World War I, they're going to say that it is the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand by the Serbian nationalist Black Hen Gavrilo Princip. And to just kind of set the stage for that, recall nationalism has led many territories to become independent. Like we said on the map, Greece, Romania, Serbia, they're all their own territories. Bosnia-Herzegovina was given to Austria-Hungary in the Berlin Conference. That's why it was striped on the previous map. And of course, that they're going to be they're going to be allied with Russia. Serbia is allied with Russia, just to clarify there. The assassination by a Serbian nationalist, Gavrilo Princip, is going to cause the Austrians to react against the Serbians. And again, loose ties, unofficial air quote ties, to the Serbian government because Serbia wanted Bosnia and Herzegovina. They just, there wasn't a whole lot they could do about it on the world stage, but they were working behind the stage to bring Bosnia and Herzegovina into the fold with Serbia. And of course, Austria is going to fight back. Their Archduke has been assassinated, and now we're going to set off this whole bar fight scenario that we had talked about previously, where Serbia has to come to the aid of Russia, other countries have to come to the aid of Austria, and so all of a sudden we have got this great big alliance system, and the dominoes fall, if you will. What makes this a world war. It's important in this point to take a moment, and this is starred, so you know it's important, but it's important specifically to make sure you know the Central Powers, or the Triple Alliance, and the Allies, also known as the Triple Entente, because these are going to be just a smidge different and have different names when we get over to World War I. So that can be slightly confusing for some folks, so make sure you come up with some fancy schmancy way to remember that the Triple Alliance is Austria-Hungary, Germany, Italy, in the beginning anyway. Eventually it's also going to be the Ottoman Empire, and that the Allies, or the Triple Entente, is Serbia, Russia, France, Britain, with Japan, Italy later, and the United States coming into the mix. So, really quickly, the course of the war, 1914 July, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Russia has to mobilize, and again, you have this I gotta help out my friend situation because they have this alliance system set up. New war, and new war techniques are specific to this time period. We don't spend a whole lot of time, like in the others and with World War II, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on all the battles and the maneuvers. We're going to concentrate on a few that are very pivotal, a few that sometimes come up in questions are the ones that I'm going to concentrate on. One of the things that is iconic to this war, to the Great War, to World War I, is the front system, trench warfare, poison gas, the urbanization of war, and airplanes are going to be first used in this war. This is where you get the Red Baron, not the pizza, the actual fighter pilot that was responsible for taking out quite a few. Again, flip over to Wikipedia, check out the Red Baron, see what he was up to. But if you're one of my Peanuts and Charlie Brown fans, you know that Snoopy frequently battles it out with the Red Baron in some of his cartoons. Also, you got submarine warfare. So new warfare is going to be um, is going to be developed in this time period. It's also important to note while we're talking about countries that Austria probably wouldn't have gotten as far as it had in this war had it not had the backing of Germany. Again, go back to looking at your alliance system. Um, Germany's going to give it kind of a blank check, and the blank check idea, with usually has quotes around it that Germany gives Austria a blank check to go to war, is one of the things that you hear frequently with this war, because the Germans probably were the only ones who could have restrained Austria at this time. They really could have put the kibosh on the whole thing. Who knows how long the war would have lasted, or if it would have really drawn out or carried on had Austria not given them, or excuse me, Germany not given the Austrians such unlimited resources. Again, that's kind of one of those things the historians like to battle it out over. Also, just going back to this idea of warfare, the new weapons that rise are going to be things such as machine guns, barbed wires. I don't know why it went down 2 slides there. It seems to do this with this program. Machine guns, barbed wire, mines, and more powerful artillery shells are going to be specific to this new war, if you will. So take a moment, if you haven't already, if you didn't read All Quiet on the Western Front, or in the SparkNotes version, it did describe what a front was. Make sure you've got that the idea of a front where all of the military resources are on one side or the other, and know that Germany had two fronts to deal with, the Eastern and the Western, whether they were dealing with France and Great Britain or they were dealing with Russia on the other side. Um, this whole idea of trench warfare, again, is also something that's going to crop up during this time period. And it is important to kind of stop and talk for just a moment about the trenches. And I believe the map down here shows actual the fronts, if you will. And these trenches would go from would stretch for miles and miles. At first, they were rapidly dug ditches, but as the stalemate is going to continue, this huge network of defensive fortifications were built, and life in the trenches were a series of horrors. You had rats that get bloated from chewing on, this is where we get a little gross, girls, sorry, readily available corpses. The noise from artillery is right there. Extreme boredom is going to set in as the war goes on quite longer than they had originally expected. Um, you're using the bathroom in these. You're writing letters to home in your trenches because you can't get up and go out of the trench. Because if you were to jump out of the trench, that is the over-the-top tactic, where again they would periodically send these soldiers out into what we call no man's land. And the second you stand up or go over the top and into no man's land, out of the trenches, you become a massive target. Also unfortunate were the choice of colors of the soldiers. When you're wearing bright red, your chances of getting hit somewhat increase. So, when you go over the top, you go into this no man's land where the machine guns are mowing you down. If you do make it out a little bit, then you've got barbed wire and poison gas is set out everywhere, mustard gas. I did read some in one of the review books, in the Princeton review book, that every once in a while in Belgium, a farmer you'll hear of a freak accident of one of the farmers uncovering some of these explosives that just crop up as leftovers from World War One. Massive casualties are going to be significant to World War One. Again, this idea of a lost generation that typically we also hear with World War Two as well. Many famous books. I believe it might be Tom Brokaw wrote a book called The Lost Generation, specifically about World War Two. But it's important to note it also was an occurrence during World War One. And urbanization. When you're talking about bombing and shelling towns and cities, bombs don't really care if you're a civilian who does nothing to do with the war versus a soldier or something that they're trying to hit. So, urbanization is a big idea during this time period, and I can promise you it'll probably be on the test. So, pay attention, of course, to trench warfare, poison gas, machine guns, urbanization, um, the introduction of gas masks. Soldiers wearing gas masks is also kind of the iconography of this time period when we see pictures and propaganda posters a little bit later in the slide. Now, again, we don't talk about too many of the major battles, but there are a couple that we do need to take a look at. The Battle of Tannenberg, if you look over there on the right hand side of the slide, they have a major loss at the Battle of Tannenberg. When you lose 30,000 men and 300,000, I believe, is the sum of Russians lost within the first 5 months of the war, according to a video I was watching over the weekend. You're going to start to see a lot of people not want to have anything to do with this war. And we know that by 1917, Russia's going to back out, and that World War I is a major factor, excuse me, of the Russian Revolution. Also, the First Battle of the Marne, we're going to address that in a later slide. That one's one we're going to pay particular attention to. The Battle of Verdun and the Battle of Somme, I'm assuming I'm saying that right, I'm probably butchering it. It's French. The Battle of Verdun is going to be a major loss of life battle, so sometimes they come into play. And that 1917 is going to be a turning point of the war. Those are the things you want to focus on for our test. So, as promised, major turning point of the war, 1917. Germans had, again, they had that massive military might, that massive military advantage of submarines. I mean, you imagine your ships are out there, you can't see something, you can't see what's firing at you. Again, submarines gave them a distinct advantage, and they had actually promised to stop their unrestricted submarine warfare after a ship called the Lusitania is going to sink. We'll talk about the sinking of the Lusitania here in just a moment, but there are a couple things that really get the United States into the war that really kind of contribute, if you will, to that turning point, and it's going to be the Zimmermann Note and the sinking of the Lusitania. But this just gives you a general outline of what's going on with the turning point of 1917. We'll take a look at the Zimmermann Note in class and see what exactly it was that it said. So I don't want to give you too much of a head start on what we're going to talk about in class. Again, added info. If you have the Princeton Review book, great. You can go to page 209 and take a look at the Battle of Marne. But some questions are actually on the test about the Battle of Marne. So here it is, basically, essentially what the Battle of the Marne was. But we really want to get an idea of what its major impact on AP Euro, what they're going to focus on, and that's that. This is the territory. The first Battle of the Marne is where they settle in for a long war. The front is located here, and you can't see all of the screen, but you can when you pull the notes up to fill in your blanks. This is where the front is located, and this is what you can't read on there. The horror of trench warfare is really going to begin, where they realize this isn't going to just be a short war. Also particular to this time period is going to be the changes on the home front and women. Those are the two things that the war really focuses on, especially if you've perused your crash course on World War I. So we're going to take a look at total war and how that changes in the next segment. We'll also take a look at how women change things. But I want to go just back up in the 30 seconds that I have left and talk about the sinking of the Lusitania. The Lusitania was a British liner. Think of the Titanic. It's actually after the Titanic, and they, again, thought they had this whole shipbuilding business down. But the Lusitania was a passenger ship. And when it sunk, it outraged quite a bit of people. But there was more to the story of the sinking of the Lusitania than just it being a passenger ship that went down. There's some added layers, and we will talk about that in the next segment.